Last week, we went live for 24 hours to try and raise money for Isla Caton and the Bradley Lowry Foundation. During that time, Gio interviewed 16 different guests. We're going to be uploading all of those to this channel, the Hammers Chat Forum channel, so make sure you subscribe below so you don't miss out on any of them. Make sure you stay till after this one so you can check out the ones already uploaded on the channel. But coming up, we've got Jim, more widely known as the H-List. Enjoy.
The best West Ham blogger has joined me, or he used to be, but he somehow stopped doing blogs, but we'll get to that in a second. Jim, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thanks, Gio. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Have you decided to reveal yourself now?
Yes. Like a bad superhero.
Yeah, no, but when we did a preview with you about a year ago, actually, and you just had your little Booger shirt, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. I think subsequent to that, I've ended up writing some articles in the Guardian and different bits and pieces. So I figured, for what little bit of fame I've got, people probably could figure out who I was anyway. So I suppose now people will be able to walk up and abuse me in person at games. So that's nice. There you go.
That's a few of you done. It's just ex-West Ham employee left to go, I think.
I think you might struggle to get ex.
You've got, but anyway. Introduce yourself to people, for people that may not know who you are, please.
So Jim Kearns, writer of the H-List, and I kind of write under the pseudonym of Head Hammer Shark. The H-List is, as you said, West Ham blog. I actually started it about 10 years ago in the wake of the FA Cup final in 2006. And kind of took a break midway through, roughly coinciding with the Kirbishley era when it was too boring to write about. And then I kind of I sort of I had a lot going on with work and family and stuff, and it sort of fell away a bit. But when we moved into the London Stadium, I kind of started writing again more regularly, and really just sort of fell away around about Christmas this year because I kind of got a new job and started working on a book as well, and that is sort of on hold as well at the moment. But yeah, maybe next year I might be able to get back into doing it more regularly. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of the H-List.
What made you start blogging? If you took a break, what made you start blogging again?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The original reason for writing a blog was that when I was growing up, when I was a kid, going to football for me, one of the things that I really loved was getting fanzines, buying fanzines on the terraces. Fortune's Always Hiding, On a Mission was another one that fantastic, and Overland and Sea was the very sort of famous one. And I thought that kind of fanzine culture was really interesting. It was kind of a completely different way of writing about football. It was for West Ham fans, by West Ham fans, and some really good stuff came out of that. And I really liked that kind of slightly irreverent way of writing, but also quite a personalised way of writing, and as West Ham fans, we know that if we want to read about West Ham in the newspaper, it's always through a filter of, a kind of broader, different perception of West Ham. Whereas actually when fans write about it and when you talk about it and when people do their vlogs and so on, it's a very different experience. People are writing as fans. So I wanted, I suppose, to kind of recreate fanzines, because with the onset of the internet, fanzines disappeared. And you can't really buy fanzines anymore outside of football grounds. But what you can do is read blogs, and you can go to forums, and you can log onto YouTube channels, and you can get all of that content in a different way. So the idea of the blog really was to try and sort of recapture that fanzine spirit. And then I suppose why I started again really was that we moved into the Olympic Stadium, and it was just a very turbulent time in our history. A lot of interesting stuff was happening, and it felt like it was interesting stuff to write about. And I guess I couldn't have timed it better, because since we moved to the Olympic Stadium, a lot of shit has happened. So there's been a lot of stuff on there, and you know that better than anyone because you talk about it every week. But there's been a lot there to get your teeth into as a fan.
So is it sorry, would it be fair to say you sort of only blog when there's negativity?
I think that's unfair to say, because I was, but my general take on it was that the H-List would be a weekly kind of match report. And that's how it was for sort of 3 seasons. Then I kind of stopped, frankly, because I didn't have the time. And now I've tended to sort of write about events, so where there have been significant events happening, that's when I've tended to write more about things. So, I wrote one about the women's team. I wrote one about some of that kind of DFLA stuff that was all kicking around at the turn of the year. Last year I wrote a thing about the 50 greatest hammers. This year, I'm hoping to try and write on my summer holiday the 50 best West Ham games of the last 25 years or so. So I don't think it's all negative. I think part of the problem is that the overriding feeling that most people have about moving into the Olympic Stadium is somewhat negative. And the team hasn't been that good since we moved in. And, let's face it, as fans, our mood goes hand in hand with the team, right? And if the team is good, we're all up. And if the team is down, then we're unhappy. And I suppose that's how I would sort of frame that.
Yeah, the reason I like yourself the most is I find it thought-provoking. I find when I read your blogs, they're very in-depth and they make you maybe look at things in a completely different perspective. Where you might read, I could probably read someone saying the same thing as you in less words and written in their own style. I would probably just read words. I would just read it and close it down again and think nothing of it. But yourself, I always found it to be quite probing and almost questioning my own opinion sometimes. If I was right, I said, hang on a minute, I don't agree with this. I usually went hand in hand with you in terms of opinions. It wasn't too far off. But I also felt there was quite a laid back humor nature to it at times, but it had a serious underlying tone. The message was serious, if you know what I'm trying to say. And that's why I liked. I thought you got the balance bang on more often than not, and it was almost like a highlight of mine on a Monday lunchtime at work. I'd click on your latest blog because some of them were a good 10-minute read.
Yeah, yes.
But they were fantastic, and that's what I enjoyed. And this season, it felt like they just disappeared a little bit. Now I know you said you'd done your greatest hammers and that, but the difference I would sort of counter argue there is, before you used to write all about the match and events around West Ham, if you like, you would write stuff that was current, and it's usually negative. But this season, what you've been writing about is stuff that has happened in the past, and it's a very broad subject rather than maybe the positive results we've just had, etc., or stuff like that. And I just wondered if there was a correlation there, or it was just an unfortunate coincidence, or if I was looking at it incorrectly.
I think it is a coincidence. I mean, the not writing is not really connected to West Ham. It's just not really having the time to do it. And I'm kind of doing a job now where I have to travel a lot more and give up more of my time. I suppose as well, I mean, when you talk about positive, I think this season has been more positive than the ones that we've had recently. But I don't think it's been the overarching success that a lot of people seem to think. I think finishing 10th was quite a significant achievement for Pellegrini. I always felt finishing in the top half would be a significant test, and actually, I do think, in that sense, I think he's done well. But I also think, as fans, that we should be demanding more. I don't think that a team with the size of support that we have, with the money that we have, the resources that we have, should be finishing 10th. I think we should be looking to do better. There's no reason why we can't compete with Wolves and Everton and Leicester and so on. But I also would say, I counter-argue myself by saying I don't think there's any chance of that ever happening so long as Sullivan is in charge. So to your point, I suppose I do have a slightly negative view, which is that I'm very pessimistic about our opportunities of ever really getting to where we all want to get to under the current ownership. I think they're a handbrake on that. It's impossible for them to produce a team that would be able to challenge for that sort of stage. So I suppose I do think perhaps slightly differently about the season just gone. I enjoyed it, but I don't think it was a sort of overwhelming success. I think it was a sort of baseline really for what we should expect given what we pay and how many fans we have and our resources.
You've got a potential controversial opinion, which you told me on Twitter a little while ago when we were sort of discussing this. And I thought that's interesting because that is definitely goes against the majority. Would you like to reveal said opinion?
Yes.
Give a headline and then break it down, because the headline might people go, oh.
Okay. Headline is, last year's transfer window was only a moderate success. And I am mystified why people would think it was any better than that. Now, if we break it down, but the only way to break that down really, Gio, is to go through the players, right? Yeah. So Fabianski, I was dead against signing Fabianski and couldn't have been more wrong, right? I mean, just couldn't have been more wrong. What a fantastic signing. Brilliant goalkeeper. Probably a side discussion as to, why we needed our goalkeeper to be quite so brilliant and whether we, what we think that actually means for next year. But anyway, fantastic signing. How long till he needs to be replaced is actually a bit of a question, because he's 34 24, maybe, I think. So, the goalkeepers age better, right? So, but anyway, great signing. Fredericks, I always thought was a really good signing, contrary to Fabianski, and probably ended up being the other way around. I think he came good at the end of the season. I still think he's exactly the type of profile of player that we should sign. And I really liked the signing, and I still do. But, he had injuries this year, which is a massive problem for us as a club anyway. And, he hasn't done well enough, I think, to convince us all that, Zabaleta could have retired. The club obviously don't agree. They've extended Zabaleta for another year. So I think the jury's still out, but I thought he was a good signing. Balbuena, fantastic when he's played. He's missed half the season. Now, the problem with that is, again, injuries are... I think fans give players a pass on injuries, right? We say it's not their fault. They get injured. It happens. And that's fine. But I don't give the club a pass on it because the club have too bad a record on injuries. So the issue I have with Balbuena is not with him as a player. I think he's excellent. But if he's going to be injury prone and miss half of every season, that's like a qualified success as a signing, right? So I think if he does a whole season next year and plays 30 games or 35 games like Diop did, brilliant. He'll be a great signing. But I think right now, to my mind, the jury is slightly out, albeit he's clearly a good player. Diop, excellent signing. Kind of signing I've been crying out for years, right? Under 25, can still resell him. Holds his resale value. He's athletic. He's young. Really good player. Played all season. Anderson, very good signing. Sorry, my daughter is crawling past behind on the floor here in an attempt not to be seen. Anderson, fantastic signing. Played all year. Stayed fit. Kept his resale value. But then I think you're into a lot of dead wood. Wilshere is an appalling signing. Never should have been signed. Sucking up tens of thousands of pounds in wages every week. Always going to be injured and has been injured all season. Yarmolenko. People tell me Yarmolenko is a good signing. I don't understand how you can be a good signing if you play 9 games or whatever it was that he played. He missed all of his last season at Dortmund being injured, and he's now missed all of this season being injured. He's turned 30, has no resale value. Perez, I think, was crap. That a lot of money for what he provided. He was like 90 grand a week for nothing. Sanchez, complete waste of time signing. 32 years old, terrible profile. Got injured immediately and missed the whole season. So, I'm not saying that there weren't very good buyers within that transfer window, but there were also a lot of rubbish buyers. And I think people gloss over them because fans are generally positive, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? People should be positive about football. That's the whole reason we go. It's escapist. But I think if you're just trying to assess it in the terms of saying, was this successful or not, I think you have to be a bit more sort of a deeper dive. And I think quite a lot of those signings were poor signings.
So what about, you said Wilshere has been a disaster. Can he sort of change your mind on that this season? If he stays fit, same goes for Yarmolenko. Really, if they stay fit and produce a good season, would you change your mind, or do you still think it's still a poor signing because they're still an injury-prone player essentially? Yeah,
I think it's a fair question. I mean, I suppose I can only answer the question now, right? So we don't know what Wilshere is going to do next year. We don't know what Yarmolenko is going to do. I mean, look, you could make the argument if Anderson injures himself next year and is injured for the remainder of his contract, he becomes a bad buy, right? Whereas Wilshere might come back next year, be absolutely fantastic, win Player of the Year, do it 2-3 years in a row, and then you say, well, what a fantastic signing. So you have to assess all of these over the life of their contract, right? But the problem with both Yarmolenko and Wilshere is a problem which afflicts West Ham under Sullivan to this day, which is that we pay no attention to players' fitness records. So we buy them and we say, if this guy could be fit, he'd be brilliant. And I look at it and say, well, he's never been fit. So why are we, Wilshere has not been fit particularly. He's only had one season, I think, in his career where he's played more than 30 games. I'm happy to be corrected on that, but it's something like that. And that was the season he was on loan at Bournemouth a year or two ago. He just is an unfortunate player. He gets injured. And we're at a stage now where we get so many injuries in our squad that I don't think we can take a chance on players like that. I would much rather they bought a player at 22 or 3 with a good injury history and took a chance on them than continue buying these 28, 29-year-olds who've got injury records and history tells you that they're going to miss a lot of games.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add about Pellegrini and/or the season that's gone by? Because I'm going to change the topic drastically in a little second.
Sure. I mean, I think Pellegrini's done well. The one thing I would say, Gio, and I don't know whether you or others agree, but I just think aesthetically it's much better to watch, right? You know, the problem with the last couple of years actually is at times the football's been dire. I think that Pellegrini has a style. I think he's quite uncompromising in that style, which leads him into problems sometimes, right? Because there's a lack of sort of flexibility. But I think by and large, I've enjoyed watching the team. They remind me a little bit of Redknapp era West Ham. Lots of quite good players going forward who don't do much defensively. Puts a lot of strain on the defence and on the goalkeeper and on Declan Rice. And it also, I think, leads to poor away performances. That Cardiff performance is the worst away performance I think I've seen in years. But I think they're on a slow upward trajectory. I just think it'll be difficult to go much further than where they are, given the constraints that exist because of the owners.
Yeah, I think we are much pleasing to watch. There has been some boring games, though. There has been some games where, come half time, you're sort of thinking, "There's another half of this to go." You know, it's not always been champagne football. We're West Ham, not Man City. I came up with the phrase about after our first 4 defeats in a row. I came up with the phrase, and I've kept it all season. That is, we're trying to play Man City tactics for West Ham players. Yeah. I think sometimes that's our problem. I think he's sometimes wanting Zabaleta to do what Kyle Walker is currently doing, and it just doesn't work, you know. And he's quite stubborn, like you just said. He is quite stubborn, and I think that's good because then it says to the board, "That's not Kyle Walker. That is not a player like Kyle Walker. I'm a player like Kyle Walker." So rather than saying, "Actually, you know what? I'll just make do as Zabaleta. I'll just change my tactics." We've been doing that for too long at West Ham. We've been trying to make tactics and that suit the players rather than actually getting players that suit the tactics the manager wants to see. And I think that's the big difference for me, really. That we've got a plan. This window is the first time in a while I've gone into it calm. I am pretty chilled out. You know, we signed nobody this window. I would still predict us to finish 10th next season. I would still say, you know what, I think we'll do all right. So it gets to the point now that it's time to bring in improvements. The groundwork's there. We've done the hard bit. Now it's actually the easy bit, which is buy 2 players. That's all you need, really, 2 players. But they've got to go into the first 11. And this is where I've got a little concern, if like, because people always say, who would you replace Obiang with? Well, actually, Mark Noble is Obiang's replacement. Mm-hmm. It's who you replace Mark Noble with is the question. I just think if we're replacing Obiang, then what's the point? You know, we need to be replacing someone that's going to budge Noble out of the team. If it's a striker, we need someone that's good enough to get an Arnautovic out of that team. Yeah. Make Pellegrini either play him on the wing or bench him. And then we've got another problem altogether. But rule of thumb, that's what I like to go for. My concern, we're not going after fullbacks in this transfer window. I'm not a big a fan as Fredericks as you are by sense. I'm really not convinced by him at all. Mm-hmm. Zabaleta, he scared me towards the end of the season. He was putting in performance on the chart. I remember, what game was it? He did that really dodgy back pass. Was it Leicester? No,
he did one at Watford. You might need to be more specific, but he definitely did one against Watford, and I think he did one against Fulham, possibly in the first minute or something.
He just passed all the way back to the keeper, and there's a striker went and got it, and you thought. And Charlie said you can forgive him for lack of pace, but that wasn't anything to do with pace. That was like a decision that Zabaleta wasn't normally doing, and it was a bit out of character. And I thought that's a really good point. And that sort of rang around in my head a little bit. Then we go to our left backs, and people seem to think Masuaku's now a top 6 left back after 4 games at the end of the season when everybody's sort of on the beach a little bit. And I think, well, hang on a minute, I'm not convinced by this at all. And I keep comparing it to clubs of our ilk. I think you look at Everton with Lucas Digne, look at Leicester with Chilwell and Pereira. Yeah. They're light years ahead of our fullbacks. And you talk about how we concede a lot of shots. And someone asked this question last night when I had Nicky on and said, why do we concede a lot of shots? And my theory was, well, they don't come down the middle of the pitch because we've got Rice, Diop and Balbuena. So the idea is against West Ham, you get out wide because the fullbacks just aren't very good. And when you're out wide, you're all of a sudden in line with the 18-yarder. It becomes quite easy to have a shot and go. But
I think the wide players don't defend either, right, as well. That's the other point, you know. So if you have Anderson and you have Yarmolenko or Antonio, you know what you're giving up, right? You're giving up defensive solidity to be able to leave those players slightly further up the pitch and try and hit teams on the break. And I think to a degree, sometimes that's quite effective. But a good example is the Everton game at home, right? I mean, they just stuck an extra player in the middle of the park and destroyed us. I mean, just absolutely tore us limb from limb that day. It was one of the sort of most comprehensive defeats I've seen in a long time. I don't think we even had a shot on goal. So So I think, I agree with what you say. I mean, I would like to see some kind of concentration on quality signings rather than quantity. I think you also make quite a good point, actually. The end of the season and the beginning of the season skew our perception of this year, I think, a little bit. The start of the season, in retrospect, was quite difficult, right? Liverpool away, Wolves, Bournemouth and Arsenal away. Now you look at that in retrospect, you say, actually, that's quite a difficult start. Probably should have got more than 0 points, but, quite tough start. And then the end of the season, we got 3 teams at the perfect time, right? We got Spurs 2 days before they played their Ajax game. Southampton the week after they got themselves safe, who should have turned up in flip-flops for their game at us. And then Watford 1 week before the FA Cup final. I mean, you couldn't pick a better time to play them. Now, which is not to say that those results don't count and all the rest of it, but I think it makes it somewhat difficult to assess because you kind of got a top and tail of the season, which is slightly skewed. And I do some, I find it a little bit tougher than you to assess. If you said to me we didn't buy anyone, where do I think we'd finish next year? I wouldn't be quite as confident as you. I think we might finish sort of slightly below 10th, but I think we're both in agreement. We need to buy a couple of very good players who improve the team, not the squad.
If you could improve one position or one player in the starting 11, which would it be?
I would like to see and have wanted to see for quite a long time a mobile central midfield player who can do something on both sides of the ball. So I think, we've had the Chiati type who can run around and get themselves involved in the game. Sorry?
That's about it. Just run about.
Yeah, exactly. And so the wider impact on the game, not so great. Whereas you have somebody who I quite like in Snodgrass, who I think is very neat on the ball and he works very hard, but he doesn't necessarily have that kind of game-changing speed or athleticism that you might want from a modern day central midfielder. So I think someone in that ilk, that would be a very expensive player. Alternatively, I do still think we need a striker and a very good one. So yeah, it would be one of those two. It's not really an answer.
Gomez tick the box for you?
That's an interesting one. I haven't seen enough of him. So his caliber is great, right? I mean, he's very highly regarded. The teams who are in for him regard him highly. It's interesting that people that I've kind of who I rate, whose opinions I rate, would sort of describe him as a sort of target man type player. I had a perception of him as slightly different than that. And I think the history sort of tells you that Pellegrini doesn't mind that type of player, right? He played with Dzeko at Man City, and I think he likes that big, strong player up front. So maybe Gomez would fit in with Pellegrini's style. I sort of played the fifth on this a bit in that I haven't seen enough of him, but I like the pedigree, and I would rather they spent 40 million on one player who could make a difference rather than 3 15 million pound players who might not.
Do you have faith in WHUISA? You've been screaming out for a director of football. You've got one now. Do you have faith?
The problem I have with WHUISA is I don't know who he reports to. So he was hired by Pellegrini, right? So this is the problem with the structure. A director of football is fine, but the manager should report to the director of football. So frankly, I don't know, because I still think it's quite hard to tell who's signing the players at West Ham, right? I mean, look at who the agents are of the players coming in. Quite often it's very similar agents who we know are close with Sullivan. So I do think that makes it difficult. I think Pellegrini got sort of a lot of praise from fans last year. And I think Sullivan probably has had to bite his tongue, because I reckon a couple of those were definitely Sullivan signings. So I'm sort of, I've wanted a director of football for a long time. Let's wait and see. If the profile of player changes, I'd be happy with that. Younger players.
I'm going to change the topic drastically now. So we'll part the bus on performances, Pellegrini, and let's talk about something off the pitch, something you're heavily involved in. Now, originally, I got you to come on to sort of, you're a big advocate of WHUISA, West Ham United Independent Supporters Advisory Board. You're a big fan of them. So I thought, brilliant. I've got Hammers United coming on. I've got the OSB coming on. I'll get you on to represent WHUISA because I know you. I don't know Lou, the new chair. So I thought I don't really want to engage with someone I don't know and I'm not comfortable with. So I thought I'll get you on. You've somewhat changed in the last week, and it's rupturing my setup, if you like. So you were supposed to be coming on as the pro WHUISA guy. So I've had a pro Hammers United, a pro OSB, a pro WHUISA, but you've sort of gone from pro WHUISA to not so sure WHUISA.
All right, let me clarify, because no, it's a fair question. I am still very much pro Independent Supporters Association, absolutely 100%. Fans need independent representation. The problem that we have at West Ham at the moment, and I know you had David Baker on earlier, I haven't had a chance to to see that discussion yet, but I think I will. I'll be interested to see what it says. But David is the chair of the official supporters board. But the problem with David, not a personal problem, just the problem with David's position, is that he is not actually a representative of fans. He is a representative of the club to fans. Because if people purport to represent you, you have to be able to get rid of them, right? Otherwise, they don't represent you. So my member of parliament represents me. If I want to get rid of him, I can vote against him, right? That's sort of how these things work. If someone is in a position where they're saying they represent you, but you have no power whatsoever to select them or deselect them or choose anybody else, then they don't represent you. So then you have to say, well, who do they represent? And in this scenario, these people can only be removed from the OSB by the club. So they are therefore, by definition, the club's representatives. So when the club engage in discussion with their own representatives, that's fine. I'm not saying that the OSB don't probably talk about some fairly good stuff. I've read the notes. They're talking about meal deals and meal provision and, kind of ticketing and stuff that goes on the day. Yeah, that's fine. I have no problem with any of that. But that is not an engagement with an independent supporters group. And the Independent Supporters Association is a democratically elected group, and they have paying members, and they are affiliated with the Football Supporters Federation, and therefore that is my preferred group that I would like to see representing West Ham fans. The problem at the moment is the leadership of that group aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and so therefore the ISA has somewhat lost its way and has become a kind of a bit of a sideshow at a time when we've never needed independent supporters groups more than we do now, because of the fact that the OSB are sort of attempting to position themselves as an independent supporters representative group. Now, I know that Hammers United is another group who are attempting to sort of fill the same void. Good luck to them. I have no problem with that. Anyone who wants to be independent and democratic and represent fans, I'm fine. I have no problem with it. So at the moment, to your point, there is a petition at the moment to try and effectively, I think, rejig the Independent Supporters Association and get a slightly different leadership involved to take that group into basically back to representing fans. They've got away from that. They've got into some sideshows areas that I think are not actually that useful for representing us as supporters. So there is a group who I think are attempting to sort of retake control or gain control of the Independent Supporters Association to make it kind of genuinely democratic and genuinely representative. That doesn't mean the fact I sort of support that petition doesn't mean I don't support the ISA. I just don't sort of support the leadership in its current incarnation.
Interesting. That's an interesting way of summing it up. Then, so you support the, as I call it, and the people be used to me saying it like this. WHUISA. You support the idea of WHUISA, the concept of WHUISA. You just don't necessarily support the people at the table of WHUISA that's running the gig, essentially. Yeah,
they've got the group faced in the wrong direction, but the problem with, or not the problem, the good thing about a democratic group and a kind of a properly constituted group is it has a constitution. So you have to abide by that constitution if you want to affect change. So I think that's a good thing. Having a constitution and all that sort of stuff is good, but it means there are processes that have to be followed if you want to affect change within that group. So I'm just supporting something at the moment to try and get that change forward, and then hopefully the ISA next year can get back to being relevant. And you're very plugged into the scene, so you'll know that lots of fans sort of are opposed to the Independent Supporters Association. They think it's a kind of political group. I don't really know what they've ever done to sort of deserve that, or sort of be on the receiving end of that particular smear. But it's not really true. Everyone I know who's been involved with it has been just completely dedicated to trying to represent West Ham fans and put forward an independent voice. So that is what I hope that group gets back to doing next year.
Have you ever put yourself forward for it?
No, I have considered it. I don't have the time. And part of the problem actually with fan representation, and I don't think people quite realise it, is there is a ton of very boring, very kind of time-consuming, labour-intensive work that you have to do in order to effectively represent fans. There are lots of meetings and groups that you have to go to. There are things that you have to familiarise yourself with in order to be able to represent fans. And actually, you need people who have got the time to do that and are sort of able to do it. I think those people are out there. They're just at the moment not on that group, but hopefully, that might change in the next year.
So, I mean, the new committee, if you like, have only been about for what, a month? Is it not? Do they not deserve a bit more time to try and sculpture it their way, if you like? Because they're essentially working with the previous committee's model rather than their own.
Yeah, it's a fair challenge. It is a fair challenge. I mean, I think that actually the chair and vice chair have been involved for quite a long time, and you know, the AGM that was held recently, I think, was shambolic. You know, I've heard from a number of different accounts that it was very disappointing, and I think part of the urgency of this really is, as I said to you, I don't think we've ever really needed these groups more than we do now. You know, but one of the reasons that Hammers United are started is because I think they see that this is a time when we really do genuinely need fan representation. You know, Sullivan, Gold and Brady, but particularly Brady, don't see any value in engaging with fans, right? Not in a meaningful way, because I think everything is about brand Brady, and she doesn't want to let a little thing like how we all feel about things get in the way of how she wants to present that. So I think we really, you know, and the OSB, you know, well-meaning as I'm sure the people on that group are, you know, they're never going to be able to ask questions of Karen Brady, like, why do you still write a column in The Sun, even though it cost us a player a couple of years ago? Why is attracting inward investment not part of the vice chairman's job? Why do you get a bonus for that? Why have the owner loans not been converted into equity so we don't continue to pay this crippling interest every year? What happened to this famous analytics department that Sullivan sat down and promised us all last year? There's quite a lot of, you know, I think quite punchy questions that need to be asked of the owners, and they're never going to get asked in the OSB. So, and also they're never going to get asked by the ISA in its current incarnation, which is why I do support change.
So in an ideal world for you, WHUISA would sort of get rid of what you would call maybe non-fan efforts, perhaps, is a fair way of wording it. I know what you're talking about, I think. It's one of the things I'm sort of iffy about as well. They get involved in stuff like food banks and stuff. Now, while it's admirable, I think they're not there yet. I think they need to build their member base to 10,000 at least before they even look at something like that. And I just think it's almost like they're trying to bite off more than they can chew a little bit. And I actually think it's doing themselves no favors, because then they've got more stuff to deal with. They've already got a very time committed role, and they're bringing on stuff that requires more time and effort, and it looks good. It's good for PR, and it's a good deed. You know, I think it's a fantastic cause and stuff like things like that. But I do think it's something that should be a personal time thing. You know, the chair or the vice chair or the committee feel that passionate about it, perhaps do it in your own time away from WHUISA, so that WHUISA can crack on with sort of fan stuff. Because one of the things that's frustrating me at the minute is this Socios app, etc., which I'm aware of it. So this Socios app has sort of irked me, and Nicky Hopkins from West Ham Fan TV, it's irked him as well. And we've been sort of waiting for people to bang the drum about it. And now Hammers United have done, to give them credit. I could have missed it, but I've not seen WHUISA say anything about it. And I think this is what we want from WHUISA. This is what WHUISA should be about. You know, they reacted very quickly to the season ticket price increases. Very, very quickly. They got a statement out. That's what we want. That's what we need. We need efficiency. We need proactive responses, etc. Gauging members and advice like that. You know, there was a day when I spoke to David Baker and they got announced. The following day, the OSB went in for a meeting, but there was 24 hours. WHUISA got a lot done in that 24 hours. Before even they sat down with the club, WHUISA already had their statement out. They were already interacting with the members. I thought, this is brilliant. But then they've almost, when they seem to be gaining a bit of momentum, they sort of drop the baton themselves. No one shoves them or that. They just do it. They just disappear. I think they've got a lack of media presence, social media presence. I think they've got a lack of. You should be seeing updates every single day. If it's nothing important, you do think, where are you? You know, like, where to find them, even if they don't follow them on Twitter.
I completely agree with everything you've just said, to be honest. I'm kind of nodding my head, and my head's going to come off in a minute. I'm nodding so strongly to what you're saying. You know, the point you make about Socios, I think, is a good. You know, where have WHUISA been on that? Completely asleep at the wheel. You know, that's a perfect example of where fans need a voice. We need someone to say this. Hang on a minute, this is nonsense. You know, what the hell? We don't need an app to help us engage with our football club. We all do that on a daily basis. That's nonsense. I completely agree with you about food banks. Food banks is a brilliant initiative. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against it. Lots of questions about why we need it in the wider society, but we do need them. And I'm absolutely not against that. But that needs to be done by a very mature supporters association that has a foundation in the community that you're talking about, that is very well established within the fan base as the voice of the supporters. So Spirit of Shankly can do that. The Everton model can do that. Tottenham can do that. Those are very well established supporters trusts or supporters associations. WHUISA is not there yet, and I sympathise with the desire to do it, but I think, as you say, there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be looked at, and I think that WHUISA did a great job with the season ticket stuff. I agree. They also did a really good job. They backed a campaign from Esther Russell, who's a West Ham fan, who wanted to get the On the Ball campaign, whereby there was sanitary products provided for female supporters. WHUISA advanced that, and then ironically, the OSB tried to claim credit for it, which is another sort of reason why I think we need genuinely independent supporters groups.
In for the Sean Whetstone part, I don't think he enjoyed that bit.
Really? Okay, I'm gonna.
I brought that up. But
you did? Okay, interesting.
That's one of the things I brought up. One of many things. But look, I've got a few questions for you from people that are watching the video live. We'll crack on with them before I let you disappear. Harry Pierce says, "What's a good route to take into blogging?" I like that question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Read a lot of blogs to start with. I think you need to know what you want. What are you bringing to the world that's unique? Why does the world need to hear your take on these things, right? Because the thing about the internet, and you'll know this as well as anyone, right? The internet is completely democratic in the sense that anyone can start up a vlog, anyone can write a blog, anyone can start up a fan TV channel or whatever. And then it becomes democratic because if it's any good, people will visit it. And if it's not, people will leave you alone. So I think you have to think about what it is you want to bring to the space in which you're going to write. And then I would read widely in that area. And then, frankly, you just have to start and get on and figure it out as you go. Nobody read the H list for years, if it's any consolation.
And Harry, if you're listening, you're looking for somewhere to blog, if you send your blog to hammerschat@gmail.com, the email's in the description. We'll put it on our blogging site for you as well. We'll give you the platform. Anyone's welcome to write for us. Just send it in. We'll put it up and you get the credit, etc. Mark Parish says, "Does too many independent groups have a negative effect?" Now, this is something Gonzo feels strongly about. Gonzo doesn't listen to any of the groups, okay? I do, but Gonzo has no interest in them because he said there's too many, they're too fragmented, they're too West Ham politics. And then Mark says it's becoming a laughing point, people's front of Judea. Do you agree with that?
I think, yes, I think so. And one of the things that I struggle with a little bit with Hammers United, as an example, is it's somewhat frustrating that there's loads of people who want to get involved and do good work, and that they felt they couldn't join the Independent Sports Association to do that. And that, not criticising them for that, because I think I understand why they didn't, but it is a bit frustrating. And I do think it leads to a fragmented sort of scene. And I also think if you put yourself in the club's position, I can kind of understand why the club are a bit reluctant to engage, because you can't engage with 35 different supporters groups. And I think as a fan base, we have never got ourselves together to do that properly. That said, you have to push on and do it. And I think the Independent Supporters Association is constituted, it's properly constituted, it's recognised by the Football Supporters Federation. What they've got to do is get back to doing what they're there to do, which is represent fans independently, give fans an independent voice, do that credibly for a couple of years. And I think what you might find is you might start to be able to bring people together. That's what I would hope for over the longer term.
Ash asks, shepherd's pie or cottage pie?
Neither. I don't eat either of those two. Steak and ale pie if I'm eating pie related.
Everybody was playing this game normally, but that's two guests in a row now. I've decided to just give a different pie answer. It's messing with his results, to be honest with you. I think. Okay,
all right. I'll say shepherd's pie, but I will moan all the way through the meal.
Yeah, well, it's on record now. Mark says, if the board are not willing to listen, what's the point?
Sorry, say that again. If people,
if the board is not willing to listen, and he's referring to WHUISA, I assume.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah. I don't think you can think like that. They've won. If that's the case, then you have no voice, you have no representation. We're a year removed from people running on the pitch. This is not a contented fan base. It's been quite a traumatic couple of years where we've moved home and it was done quite poorly. It's been led by people who I think don't particularly understand football fans. And so I think in that sense, the reason that you don't give up and the reason you keep pushing and you keep pushing is that you have to get your numbers to be big enough that you have to be taken seriously. If we have a 10,000 strong independent supporters association or Hammers United, frankly, if you've got that group sitting outside doing everything the right way, representing fans, giving fans a voice, it becomes more and more ludicrous that the board are only speaking to people that they've chosen. So actually now more than ever, those groups need numbers.
Fantastic. Gary says, is there any plans for you to write a book? I think you mentioned this at the very start. Having read your blog regularly, a book would be a cracking read.
So yes, I did get into some discussions with publishers about this, and one of the first reason that I stopped writing the this was to start researching and writing that book. It would have been the working title was, I can probably reveal, Chaos Theory: 10 Years at the Maddest Club in Britain, and it would have coincided with the Sullivan and Gold era. And it would have been kind of a recap of that, because I think for people outside of West Ham, I think they would find it difficult to genuinely believe all of the shit that's happened in that 10-year period. I still think that it's a great topic for a book. I've just not been able to find the time to do it. But to answer Gary's question directly, I think, yes, there is a plan to write a book. Part of the problem actually with Sullivan and Gold is we still don't know what the end of the story is, right? I mean, they'll either sell or relegate us or, do something. So, yeah, maybe it might be more tied into the end of their reign and a reign of terror. And when they go, maybe I'll write that story.
Sean Weston, Mr. West Ham Football, who you'll know very well, of course, does Jim agree that there's a general apathy for all supporters groups? Most supporters don't care if a group is affiliated to the FSF or not. Fans have been worn down over many years with not much done.
I agree that fans don't care who's affiliated or not to the FSF, but as Sean does know, that's material to what that group can get done. So if you're affiliated to the Football Supporters Federation, which is now called the FSA, I believe, you get to sit at a table with other supporters trusts and other supporters groups and try and influence change. And actually that group is very powerful, because once you bring people together from lots of different clubs, you can affect change. So I think firstly, that is important, although I accept that other people don't care about it. Is there an apathy? Yeah, I think there's a general apathy in society for organised groups and, doing what is frankly boring stuff, right? I mean, it's boring to represent fans in some way. Campaigning to get sanitary products into the women's bathroom it's like a boring, unrewarding task that like literally 90% of the people in the ground don't care about because they're men. But actually, it doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for. And similarly, when an individual gets a ban from the stadium and it's not fair, okay, 60,000 people in the stadium don't care, but that one guy and his two mates care about it, so unfortunately it's a kind of inch by inch step for supporters groups. And has enough been done? Probably not, but that's what I'm hoping might change in the next couple of years. I don't think it's a fight we should give up, but I think we also ought to accept it's quite it's a long-term thing. It's not going to happen overnight.
Is there any chance of the likes of yourself, Lou, Bubbles, and David Baker sitting down in a room and sort of merging?
Well, I don't represent anybody, so I'm here in the context of being a WHUISA member, right? So I guess I can't speak on behalf of anybody with that. I would be very reluctant to merge with the OSB because the OSB is not democratically elected. I've kind of explained my view on the OSB. I don't think that's a group that meaningfully represents fans, so I wouldn't see any point in merging with them.
If it becomes democratic, the OSB, will you have a problem with it, or will you then accept the OSB a bit more?
I think it would. I think becoming democratic is step one. Yes, I would accept it more if those individuals were voted and had a mandate. Absolutely, but I still want to know how do we ask those questions that I mentioned before? Who, because if all the individuals in those rooms have to sign NDAs, or if Karen Brady wants to vet the agenda, or if she wants to write the minutes, then it sort of just retreats back to being pointless, doesn't it? If we can't ask any question we want of the board, then there's sort of not any point. Now, I completely get that the board don't have to answer all those questions. That's fine. But as it stands at the moment, there isn't really a forum for fans to ask that question. merging with Hammers United or coming together with Hammers United. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that the ISA should potentially consider in the future. That Hammers United would have to prove, I think, some stuff themselves. They've got to. I don't know enough about them. I don't know if they're democratic, and I don't know kind of what their views are on certain stuff. But like I said, any independent fans group that's democratic and wants to independently represent fans, I'm fine with. I don't think the OSB fit into that model. Hammers United, if they fit into it, yeah, fine.
Just give me 1 second. I was trying to see a post from Roger. I can't see it in the live chat, but it must be here somewhere. I think I'm just going blind, to be honest with you. I don't know. I can't see it. Sorry, Roger. I can't see it. I can see Charlie saying he was away to post it, but I can't see what Roger's posted. Apologies. Anyway, we had David Baker on earlier, and David Baker actually said that they've set the agenda for the next meeting, which is in July. So is that as a plus point for you, if you like? Is this sort of the start of positivity from the OSB?
Not really. I don't know. If I can't remove them, they don't represent me. So like I think I said to you, and I do want to be clear. Like, it's not a personal thing for any of the individuals who are on the OSB. I get that they're there because they want to try and affect change and they want to represent fans, and I have no problem. I respect that. And they're giving up their own free time to do it. So it's not a kind of personal attack on any of those people. But if they're not genuinely independent, then they can't represent fans in the right way. And actually, by participating in this weird construct, right? Only West Ham have this. Only Brady does this. Every other club in the land just says, okay, we'll just engage with our independent groups and we'll just speak to them and we'll just sort of suck it up and deal with it. So the Tottenham supporters group get to sit with Daniel Levy twice a year or something. So, Brady's just kicked all that out the window and said, I'm going to appoint my own people and I'm going to speak to them. Well, that's just meaningless in terms of representing us. So, yeah, I hope they do well and I hope they affect some change, but I'm very dubious as to that, and I wouldn't support it in a kind of overarching sense.
Right, well, I'll have a couple more questions. Hannington Lion says, has your association with The Guardian caused difficulties with some West Ham fans?
Mine, personally?
Yeah.
I don't really know that I have an association. They asked me to write an article about the Burnley thing, which I did. And beyond that, I have no other association beyond reading it. So I don't know, unless he's talking about something else. I would say no to that, but maybe not.
I think I know what he's alluding to. Sorry to interject there. I think I think when you mentioned earlier on about WHUISA perhaps having some political affiliation, I think it probably relates back to the whole Real West Ham thing, where I think WHUISA were probably tarnished.
I can't hear Gonzo here, by the way. Just saying.
Oh, sorry. Am I not on? Am I not? Gio, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Well, I can't put the question. I just think if you want to explain it, I think it is.
I can't hear Chris though. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll pass the question on. Don't worry.
I think it was to do with the WHUISA thing. I think when the Real West Ham fans tarnished WHUISA as being left, I think it has more to do with that, because earlier on, H-List asked, he didn't understand why that WHUISA were seen as being political on one side. I think it was to do with that.
So what's the question? Do you have a question?
No. He didn't understand why it would be thought of the Guardian, because the Guardian is seen as a left paper. Sorry, that's why.
Jimmy's basically saying it's to do with the WHUISA and the Real West Ham fans group a year ago, in terms of all that political thing that went on, etc., etc. If you watch it back, Jim, you go back and watch this back, you'll be able to hear Gonzo through the broadcast, etc. I know you won't be able to reply to him then, but at least you'll understand what Gonzo's trying to. It's not got a question for you. He's just,
Okay.
he's just explaining why the Guardian question was asked. But anyway.
Okay.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Jim, before we say au revoir to yourself?
Well, no. Thank you very much for having me on, and just want to thank you really for taking the time to do this. It's incredible, the endeavour that you guys have shown. I don't know if have you been awake for 24 hours, Gio, at this stage?
Well, a bit more than that. I woke up at 7 o'clock yesterday morning. I got a small nap in the afternoon. I tried to stay awake the whole Thursday night, and I thought I'd sleep during the day Friday. And I went to my bed at like 3 o'clock Thursday night. I woke up at 7. My body just woke up, and I was just like, "This is not good." So I sort of ate quite a big lunch, just trying to knock me out a bit. It worked for a small period, but I was actually tired before the stream started. 3-4 o'clock this morning, I was on the verge. I could have if I shut my eyes, I would have slept. I was struggling to concentrate on who was speaking. Luckily, Tom and Charlie were there, and they were doing all the talking, but I was struggling. But I don't know, about 5 o'clock this morning, maybe I sort of just picked it up when daylight came. Do you know? It's a bit like Gizmo on the Gremlins. When it sees light, I think it was a bit like that. I got a little bit of light on me. And that was me good to go again. But anyway, Jim, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on as always. I thoroughly enjoy talking to you, and people on this channel regularly know that I think a lot of your blogs and stuff. So please start writing again, will you? And
I will do something over the summer. I promise. And thank you for having me, and thank you for all the stuff you're doing now. It's fantastic, and I'm really glad I could be a small part of it.
Take care. Thank you very much, Jim. See you in a bit. You can now purchase a season ticket for the Hammers Chat boats for the 2019-20 season. Prices start from £60 and includes entry to all boats events that we may have, including cup games and friendlies at the London Stadium next season. Please get in touch via email at hammerschat@gmail.com or via Twitter, hammers_chat. All details are in the description below. Get in touch and we'll see you next season.